Next tonight, another in Charlene Hunter-Galt's weekly conversations focusing on solutions to the drug problem in America. Charlene?
Robin, my conversation is with the authors of The Kings of Cocaine, a new book detailing the evolution of the Medellin Cartel, a mammoth organization that by the middle of the 1980s controlled more than 50% of the cocaine coming into the United States, as much as 50 metric tons each year. The book is based on a series of articles that ran in the Miami Herald in 1987. It tells the story of the four kings of the cartel: Pablo Escobar Gaviria, also known as the Godfather; Jorge Luis Ochoa Vasquez, or the Fat Man; Carlos Leder Rivas, Joe Leder; and Joe Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, or the Mexican. I recently asked the authors, Guy Gugliotta and Jeff Lean, how the cartel got started.
Most of them started as apprentices to traditional smugglers. Smuggling has always been a big business in Colombia. Smuggling of radios, tape recorders, cigarettes, liquor. And that's where they got their apprenticeship. They moved into drugs when they saw a potential market. There's a legend in Medellin that said where the older sons always go overseas or go away to make their fortune. If you succeed, send money. If you don't come home.
The Medellin cartel has only about 30 guys at the top. Why are they so powerful?
Well, one of the unique features of the cartel is they're vertically integrated monopoly. I mean, they control the drug from the supply all the way to the streets in the kilo level. They have independent groups that do their distributing, that do their transporting, that do their security, that do their lab processing. So the 30 people is just the executive committee of this gigantic organization, which I think numbers into the thousands when you add up how many people it takes to transport one load, how many to offload, how many to transship, how many to do the lab services.
Back to those numbers, I mean, only 30 people. How have they so successfully eluded law enforcement?
They live in a country in which they've been able to disable the justice system to a point where it no longer functions when it's applied to them.
How?
Well, they've managed to wipe out members of the Supreme Court who favored extradition. They've managed to kill the most dynamic anti-drug law enforcement officer, Jaime Ramirez. They've anyone who has stood in their way, anyone who has tried to bring them to justice, has been met with a MAC-10. So they've virtually created a sanctuary down there for themselves. They're guarded by private armies, and the police forces have been corrupted to the point that every raid is blown before it happens, virtually.
What about the money involved?
The important thing to recognize about the money is the difference between, say, marijuana money and cocaine money. I mean, we moved from the hundreds of thousands of dollars and the ones and twos and 3 millions of dollars to the tens of millions, the hundreds of millions, the billions of dollars. The Medellin cartel are virtually the first billion-dollar criminals that we've ever seen. So the money is staggering. It's enormous. It's unprecedented. It got to the point where they were weighing it instead of counting it. And, I mean, 20 pounds of $100 bills equals $1 million, that sort of thing. And it's the like of which has never been seen before.
But because of this, the cartel is in a certain sense vulnerable. The money laundering investigations, cartel is always trying to put money in banks, transfer money, cash money from one place to another. And the cartel is extremely vulnerable here. And money laundering investigations are difficult from a legal standpoint and from a paper chasing standpoint.
We documented $10 million in property that the traffickers owned. This was property unknown to law enforcement that we went out, we pulled the deeds, we read Pablo Escobar's name on them, and we showed them to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And they were able, within a few months, to seize that property, $10 million.
Asset seizures is what this is called in the trade. It's like the first cousin of money laundering. The idea, if you're a drug trafficker, is to make a lot of money, buy a lot of toys, and have a lot of fun. And so you buy condos, you buy banks, you buy property, you buy horses, you buy boats, you buy hotels, you buy casinos, you buy all kinds of things. And if you can take away that stuff, they don't like that, because what am I in the business for if I can't enjoy it? But if you can take 10, 20, 30, or $100 million away from them, it has a much greater effect than if you take 10 tons of cocaine away from them. Cocaine to them and the price they pay for cocaine is small. But the money is it's their mode of transaction. You take the money away from them and you're denying them something. If you can hit them $100 million at a time, and you do that enough times, you're going to hurt them badly.
Is this something you think the U.S. should make a priority?
I think so, this and money laundering, because this does good for you too. If I'm a cop in Colombia and I seize 2 or 3 tons of cocaine, that doesn't do the Colombian police force any good. But if I seize $100 million, then if the cops keep that and use that to turn that, to put that to use against the cartel, then you're doing something. If I get a whole bunch of airplanes or boats and I auction them off, that's money that I can use to fight drugs. In Colombia in 1984, the government poured all kinds of police, all kinds of army people, sent them out to arrest a whole bunch of people and put them in jail, chase around assets, destroy labs, and do all of these law enforcement things that the United States has been calling upon them to do for so long. Well, this is great for a few months, but as soon as you stop that pressure, it continues.
What about U.S. law enforcement? I mean, does it have the ability to do this?
In the United States, you need to mount a concentrated, systematic program to reduce demand for drugs. Only in that way are you going to get the market down to a sufficient size where law enforcement can control it. And just taking a lot of money and a lot of people and a lot of resources and putting them in the street doesn't do it.
One of the things it can do is to give the drug problem a greater priority in its foreign policy. They've law enforcement has always taken a back seat to any foreign policy concern. And in 1987, Reagan declared drugs a national security problem. So if it's a national security problem, treat it as a national security problem. We need something where all the parts work together, where the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, where the State Department doesn't trump what the Justice Department wants to do, where demand reduction works together with supply reduction.
See, if you have a situation in which what you're doing is law enforcement and nothing else, then you have no goals. You're fighting a drug war, but you have no objective. Our objective in this country has got to be drug abuse, shrinking demand. You shrink demand, you shrink the size of the market to a size where law enforcement can deal with it. In Colombia, the goal, to my mind, has got to be shoring up or restoring the integrity of national institutions. If you can't try a drug trafficker, what's the point?
What about the indictments that have been handed down in Miami of the big drug dealers and foreign heads of government? How much good do they seem to do?
I think it's a waste of time. I mean, to indict them, that's fine, because then you have something that you can arrest them on if they ever come here, if you can ever get them extradited. But to indict people and make a big public issue out of it, that's fine, but I mean, it gets you nowhere.
Well, it serves the purpose of showing how big and powerful these people are. I mean, the first Medellin cartel indictment as a group, they were charged with producing 58 tons of cocaine between 1981 and 1985. The biggest indictment before then was 7 tons. Happened to be a related cartel case that wasn't mentioned in that indictment. So it gives you an idea of the force you're dealing with.
How do you get on top of something like that?
There was a time when if they had been able to decapitate the business by taking these people out of commission, probably around 1984, it would have made a difference. But the market is gigantic now. It's much bigger than it was in 1984. I think what you've got to do is you've got to shrink the size of the market. I think our major resource should be put into education and programs of that sort. Because you arrest the people, but you can't try them. You can't seize the assets in Colombia. That's illegal. They don't have laws to cover that. At every step of the way in Colombia, you have law enforcement with no institutional underpinning, so you lose. Here we have law enforcement without any demand strategy. It's the same thing.
So you're saying forget the cartel, write off the Colombian justice system, just concentrate here on demand?
No, I'm not saying that. I think that you take care of your own house first. Our own house is drug abuse, as far as I'm concerned. So you adopt a coherent strategy to curb drug abuse, to curb demand. As Jeff says, you're also focusing on all these law enforcement things. And at the same time, you're going to the Colombian government and saying, listen, we know what your problem is. We're willing to help. And then at the same time, you're taking away the Colombians' argument, which is the United States never does anything about demand. How can we do anything? Well, that was in effect true for many, many years. Take that argument away from them. Make them look at their problem by looking at our problem.
There's been some suggestion that one of the things the U.S. could do is go into Colombia, burn out, or in some other way take out the coca crops and compensate the people and then help them to develop other kinds of crops, some kind of Marshall Plan. Would that kind of thing work?
I don't think we should be doing other nations' business for them. In other words, the point is that a country like Bolivia or Peru or Colombia should realize that they have to take control of their own destiny and that they need to inaugurate a strategy with U.S. help. Because once you get involved in sending helicopters and sending troops down to foreign countries, you don't get out of that. You can drive the drug traffickers undercover, but you can only do that for as long as you're there. So if you're going to go in with a commitment of huge numbers of troops and stuff, be prepared to stay there forever.
And coca is a 2,000-year-old industry in these countries. I mean, it's deeply embedded in their culture. They would not give it up easily.
What impact do you hope your book will have?
I think the most important thing our book does is it puts the big picture together, and it also puts a human face on these people. I mean, you constantly hear to them being referred to as Colombian cocaine barons or drug barons, and they're referred to almost generically. And when people refer to them that way, it's easier to put the problem in the back of your mind. These are real people. Here's who they are. Here's what they look like. Here's how they operate. And we want to focus the most attention we possibly can. We want to put the spotlight on these people because that's what they hate most, and that's what affects their ability to work most.
I would like to see it make people start thinking about cocaine in all of its dimensions. Instead of just the street buy, instead of just a problem that Washington, D.C. has in very high profile now, instead of a law enforcement issue, more guns, more money. I would hope that in the United States people would see this for the profound social bread and butter issue that this has become. This is no longer simply a matter for law enforcement. It's a matter for that requires, I think, a major look at what people are doing. I mean, in this country, every citizen in this country has the power to put an end to the cocaine traffic, to stop using it.
One of the world's most powerful drug traffickers was killed today. Colombian officials said Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, his son, and 11 bodyguards were shot to death in a gun battle with police in northern Colombia. Rodriguez Gacha was a leader of the Medellin drug cartel. He was sought by U.S. officials to face drug charges in Miami and Detroit. Earlier today, another alleged Colombian drug dealer was extradited to the United States. Nelson Cuevas Ramirez faces charges of bringing more than 200 pounds of cocaine into this country and conspiring to import another 300 pounds. This afternoon, he entered a not guilty plea at the federal courthouse in New York City. Ramirez is the 10th person to be extradited from Colombia since August.
¿Qué hubo?
Muy buenas.
Buenas, a sus órdenes. ¿Cómo le va?
Este figura hecho en Yugoslavia. No, este funciona como modelo RTK 47. ¿Listo? Se alcanza a ver el escudo de México ahí, el cóndor encima. Una foto de él.
Sí, perfecto el tamaño, perfecto. El escudo.
La cantidad de gente que lo secunda, ¿no? Por ejemplo acá.
Para que vean esto, sacar rapidito sin no hacer ese se los gana. Tenga la duro, ya, questo